A long, long time ago, there was a man named Moses who did something so brave that people all over the world still talk about it today. He walked right up to the most powerful king in the whole world, knocked on the door of his giant palace, and said, "Let my people go." He had no sword. He had no army. He had nothing except a wooden stick and a big, brave heart. And what happened next is one of the most amazing stories ever told. Egypt was a very, very big and powerful country a long time ago. The king of Egypt was called Pharaoh, and he was like the most important person in the entire world at that time. He had a huge palace, thousands of soldiers, and so much gold you could not count it all. People were so afraid of him that they bowed down whenever he walked past. He thought he was a god, and nobody dared to tell him he was wrong. But there was a big problem in Egypt. There were a group of people called the Israelites who were living there, and they were not free. They were slaves. That means they were forced to work every single day without being paid, without rest, and without any choice. They carried heavy stones, made bricks under the hot desert sun, and if they stopped working, they were punished. It was not fair at all, and it made God very sad to see it. Now here is where the story gets really interesting. Before Moses was even old enough to walk, a wicked king in Egypt made a terrible rule. He said that every baby boy born to the Israelite people must be thrown into the river. It was a cruel and frightening time. But Moses had a very clever and very brave mother who loved him so much that she made a little basket, placed baby Moses inside it, and gently set it on the river so he could float to safety. The basket floated right to the edge of the river where a princess was bathing. She was the daughter of the Pharaoh himself. She looked into the basket and saw a tiny baby crying, and her heart melted with love. She decided to keep the baby and raise him as her own son. She gave him the name Moses. Can you imagine that? The very baby the king wanted to get rid of ended up growing up inside the king's own palace, eating at the king's table and sleeping under the king's roof. Moses grew up as a prince in Egypt. He wore fine clothes, ate good food, and had everything a child could ever want. But deep inside, he knew something was not right. One day, he saw an Egyptian man being very cruel to an Israelite slave, and Moses could not stand it. He knew in his heart that those slaves were his real family, his real people, and what was happening to them was deeply wrong. After many years of living away from the palace as a quiet shepherd in the wilderness, something happened that changed Moses forever. He was walking near a mountain when he saw the strangest thing he had ever seen in his life. A bush was on fire, but it was not burning up. The fire just kept going, and the bush stayed perfectly green. Moses walked closer to look, and then he heard a voice coming from the bush. It was the voice of God. God spoke to Moses and told him something very important. He said, "I have seen how much my people are suffering in Egypt. I have heard them crying. I want you to go back to Egypt and tell Pharaoh to let them go." Moses was very scared when he heard this. He said, "But who am I to go and talk to such a powerful king? I am not even a good speaker. What if nobody listens to me?" But God promised to be with him every step of the way and told him not to be afraid. So Moses packed up his things and went back to Egypt with his brother Aaron by his side. Together they walked right into the royal palace and stood before Pharaoh. Moses looked the most powerful man in the world straight in the eye and delivered the message. He said, "God has sent me to tell you to let the Israelite people go free." Pharaoh laughed. He was not afraid at all. He said he did not know this God, and he was certainly not going to free all his slaves just because a shepherd with a stick asked him to. Instead of freeing the people, Pharaoh made things even harder for them. He told his workers to make the Israelite slaves do more work than before. The people were exhausted and upset, and some of them even got angry at Moses for making things worse. But Moses did not give up. He went back to God and told him what happened, and God told him to keep going. So Moses went back to Pharaoh again and again, carrying a message that never changed. "Let my people go." Because Pharaoh kept refusing, some very remarkable things began to happen in Egypt. These events are called the 10 plagues, and they came one after another like a countdown to freedom. First, the water in the great river of Egypt turned to blood and all the fish in it died. Nobody could drink from it. Then frogs came, so many frogs that they were everywhere, in the beds, in the kitchens, in the food. Pharaoh begged Moses to make them stop and promised to free the people, But as soon as the frogs went away, he changed his mind again. Then came tiny little bugs called gnats that filled the air and got into everything. After that came flies, so many flies that the whole land was covered in them. Pharaoh kept saying yes and then saying no, like a child who promises to share their toy and then takes it back. Each time he broke his promise, things in Egypt got harder and more difficult. The animals got sick. Then painful sores appeared on people's skin. Then a terrible storm of huge hailstones fell from the sky and destroyed the crops in the fields. After the hail came locusts, which are like very big grasshoppers, and they ate every single plant left in Egypt until there was almost nothing green remaining anywhere. Then God sent 3 days of complete darkness over all of Egypt. It was so dark that people could not see their own hands in front of their faces. Imagine 3 whole days of total darkness with no light at all. The Egyptians were terrified, but still Pharaoh would not let the people go. Then came the 10th and final event, and it was the most serious of all. God warned Moses about it ahead of time so that the Israelite families could prepare themselves. He told them to put the blood of a lamb on the doorframes of their homes as a special sign. That night, something very sorrowful happened in every Egyptian home, including in Pharaoh's own palace. The oldest child in every Egyptian family passed away in a single night. It was a night of great sadness and crying all across the land of Egypt. Pharaoh woke up in the night to the sound of crying from every corner of his kingdom. He had lost his own beloved son. His heart was completely broken. He called for Moses right away in the middle of the night and told him to take all the Israelite people and leave Egypt immediately. For the first time, the great and powerful Pharaoh was not giving orders with pride. He was begging. He said, "Go, take your people, take your things, and please leave." The people of Israel had been waiting 400 years for this moment. The Israelites packed up everything they owned as fast as they could and started walking out of Egypt before the sun even came up. There were so many of them, men, women, children, grandparents, babies being carried in arms. Whole families who had never known what freedom felt like were now walking out into the open air as free people. It must have felt like the most beautiful morning any of them had ever seen. They walked and walked with big smiles and grateful hearts. But then something scary happened. Pharaoh changed his mind one more time. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was anger. Whatever the reason, he called all his soldiers together, jumped into his chariot, and chased after the Israelites with his entire army. The people of Israel were walking when suddenly they looked behind them and saw dust clouds rising from thousands of horses and chariots racing toward them. And when they looked ahead, they saw the Red Sea blocking their path. They were trapped. The people were terrified and started crying out in fear. Some of them even said they wished they had stayed in Egypt. But Moses stood up tall and told them not to be afraid. He told them to stand still and watch what God was about to do. Then Moses stretched his hand over the sea, and the most incredible thing happened. A strong wind blew all night long, and the water in the sea divided. It split right down the middle, and the ground between the 2 walls of water became dry. The Israelites walked right through on dry ground with walls of water on both sides of them. When the Egyptian army tried to follow them through the same path, the wheels of their chariots got stuck in the mud. Then Moses stretched his hand over the sea again, and the water came rushing back, covering the entire army. The Israelites stood on the other side and watched in complete silence as the sea closed over their pursuers. They were safe. They were free. The long nightmare of 400 years of slavery was over, and the journey toward a brand new life had just begun. Moses then led the people in a song of celebration. They danced, they sang, and they praised God with everything they had. It was a party of freedom unlike anything the world had ever seen. Children who had grown up watching their parents suffer were now running freely on open ground with no chains and no cruel taskmasters following them. The sky above them was wide and blue and full of possibility. Everything was new. Everything was different. Everything was finally right. The story of Moses teaches every child something very powerful and very important. It teaches us that being brave does not mean you are never scared. Moses was scared many times. It teaches us that doing what is right is always worth it, even when it is hard and even when people do not believe in you at first. It also teaches us that no matter how long something unfair has been going on, change is always possible. One person with courage, faith, and love in their heart can make a difference that lasts forever.